Hello YouTubers, this is Cessna Ace back again with another Mega LaserDisc ads video. I have added approximately 200 LaserDiscs since last time I did one of these videos. I had accumulated about 120 that I had to show. And then Friday I got a package from Music and More in the Netherlands. That made the third package from them that I had received since last time I did one of these. Saturday, I was trying to decide whether I should go out to yesterday and today out at the flea market or not, because I wasn't feeling all that well. Plus, the last 3 weeks or so, he hadn't had any new ones come in. Sunday, it was bucketing. Rain was just pouring down yesterday all day. So I was putting off whether I should go out there or not. But I finally broke down. I called Bill yesterday and today and asked him if he had any new LaserDiscs come in, and he said he had. Saturday, a woman came in with about 150. Well, at that point, the flea market was about 40 minutes away from being of closing. But I got out there as quickly as I could safely. That left me about 20 minutes to go through what he had. Fortunately, he knows mostly what my tastes are. So about 100 of them he had put aside and out of sight. Another 50 or so he put out. So I started going through the ones he had put aside for me first, and I was just amazed at some of the stuff I was finding. And of course, I got about half of the ones he had put aside, and then I went through and got some that he had put out to see what he had, and I was finding stuff I wanted, so I went ahead and got some of those. But he's still holding about 50 or 60 for me, which he'll do. He'll do it for anybody, really. But a lot of people don't ask. For example, one of the ones he had put aside for me was one I already had, and that was the letterbox release of Fantastic Voyage. I already had a copy of that. So I told him, well, go ahead and put that out in the inventory because it's going to be quite a while before I get to it. And he said, well, that was all right. He had another customer that he knew had been looking for it for a long time but was not finding it. Now, as far as I know, it's not a rare release, but he wasn't able to find another copy. This is the guy that comes in and buys one or two a week. And he never asks Bill to put any aside for him, which I find odd, because one time I went in and I saw this that I really, really wanted, and of course bought. And when I brought the stack to Bill to pay for them, he said, so-and-so's really going to be upset that you bought that. But I warned him. I said, if you see that, you're going to buy it. And he was just in here the day before. And he said, well, he was going to get it next week. But Bill tried to tell him, if Mark sees this, he's going to buy it. That was his hint, which he didn't pick up on. But anyway, first up, I am going to show a test pressing that I received from the Netherlands. This is a test pressing of a canceled release. I've mentioned this in a previous video. Prior to buying it, when I came across it at Music and More, I sent a private message to the seller, and I told him I had an interest in any test pressings, first of all. And secondly, I asked him to screen this because it's in the PAL standard, and I can't play PAL standard discs. I already have this movie on LaserDisc. It's the Universal Signature Collection box set of it. So it's the director's cut. It's in CAV entirely. It's got him making a documentary. It's got a lot of other bonus features to it. So I've got the best version of this on LaserDisc already. But the idea of getting a test pressing, I thought was rather cool. Well, he screened it and he said that there was a light amount of speckling, but it wasn't bad. So I went ahead and got it. Now, after I paid for it, not before, after I paid for it, he told me that actually this is one of the hardest test pressings to find. As he lives in the Netherlands and Philips is in the Netherlands, he gets test pressings in a lot. But this one is really hard to find. And he said you can go the rest of your life and never find another copy. Now, Philips numbered their test pressings. This is number 18 of this particular test pressing. Now, also came across a LaserDisc that was in a jacket like this, but it wasn't a test pressing. There had been a test pressing, and then the publisher hired Curray to make up a batch for commercial release. But before the jackets were made up, the release was canceled. Then I found a second movie. Then I found a third movie like that. Now, the third one I found, he had 2 copies of. I only bought one so that somebody else can go ahead and get the other one, because he had sent me a list of all the ones he had in test pressings for. There was a Star Wars film, I remember. There was a Battlestar Galactica film and Animal House. And I said, well, I'll get them about a week or so if they're still in stock, because I didn't have the money at that time. Well, within days they were sold. They were gone. Anyway, this is number 18 for the test pressing of the canceled Netherlands release of 1941. Made at the Philips facility in the Netherlands. Now, there are no mint marks, I noticed. There were NTSC releases in the Netherlands. In fact, there were NTSC releases in a lot of places you wouldn't think there would be NTSC releases. Germany, the UK, mainly in China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and so forth. Most of the releases for those countries are in the pound standard, but each of those countries also had about a dozen or so NTSC releases. I found that out because the guy who has the largest viewable collection at the LaserDisc database, in fact, he has the largest collection entirely. I was saying all of these NTSC releases, but for Malaysia, China, and Germany, and France, and wait a minute, those are PAL countries. Well, he gave me the lowdown on those. Anyway, next up I'm going to show the box sets that I picked up yesterday. The first one, this is the most complete release that this particular film got on LaserDisc. It was also released in Hong Kong. But the Hong Kong release runs less than 2 hours and is pan and scan. This is letterboxed, and it runs 242 minutes. Unfortunately, there were a lot of reported cases of defective discs with this release, as it was made by Sony's US facility. I wish they didn't use that facility so much. Now, if you just do a search for Hamlet be aware that there were 3 different film adaptations of Hamlet released on LaserDisc, and apparently a ballet based on Hamlet that was released on LaserDisc. But anyway, I only paid $3 for it. I haven't tried it yet, but I will eventually, if it plays fine. I'll mention it in a video. Okay, now after coming across that one, I was bummed when I called up this one, because there were a couple cases reported of defective discs for this release, and it really wasn't surprising, as it was, the stated manufacturer was Technodisc. This is the Roadshow cut of Cleopatra. Generally, Roadshow editions were longer than the general releases. I don't even think they do Roadshows anymore. Anyway, I always check mint marks for the discs that I buy against the ones that are in the database, just in case I have one made at a facility other than the one indicated. And it turns out my copy was not made by Technodisc. It was made by Pioneer. Runs 246 minutes. Yes, 4 hours and 6 minutes. This film nearly bankrupted Fox back in the day, and then they were saved by The Sound of Music, which, believe it or not, when it was released theatrically, it stayed in continuous release for 4.5 years. That's how popular The Sound of Music was. It made a ton of money for Fox. Then they misread the whole thing and figured, well, it was the fact that it was a musical. So they made Dr. Doolittle, and it lost a ton of money. Included in this box set is a reproduction of the original press kit. Try fitting this in a DVD case. Anyway, I have submitted an update for this, including the mint marks for the Pioneer made discs. Okay, now I have a release that has been pending in the LaserDisc database for a long time. And so I was excited when I found a copy of it. I had a copy before, in the past. And in fact, I had a copy of a release that wasn't all color. It was part color and part black and white, because the footage that was in black and white, none of the known color footage still existed. However, so they released it on LaserDisc and on VHS too, as a hybrid, black and white and color. But then they came across a all-color print, which they issued on LaserDisc. I did a search for the catalog reference by catalog reference number when I went to add this to my collection, and saw that it was a pending release, and also found that Paramount Home Video had assigned the same catalog reference number to another title, that being Volume 19 of the original Star Trek series on LaserDisc. That catalog number is LV 60040-99. Well, I sent a private message to Julian, the administrator, to let him know that I had found the copy, and I included a picture in one of the threads, which I told him about. And he said, well, is it anything like this? And he provided a link. And what came up was this. jacket. And it had the information that was listed was all the same, including the mint marks, except it had a different catalog reference number, and it had a different running time, which is wrong because the mint marks are the same, which means the discs are the same. So I have timed this, and this runs 64 minutes, not the 102 minutes that was in the database for the other release. As I said, this one is LV60040-99. The other release that was already in there and approved was LV60040-99CE. No CE on this one. I have already watched this, and it plays perfectly. Thank you very much. That was one of the ones he put aside for me yesterday and today. Okay, now I already have this film, 2 other releases on LaserDisc. It was released a lot of times on LaserDisc. When it was first released on video cassette, VHS, and Betamax, it sold retailed for $120 because of the demand for it. Because LaserDiscs are not copy protected, Fox delayed releasing a LaserDisc edition until pretty much all of the demand for the video cassette release had been satisfied. LaserDisc only sold for 34 or something, not 120. The film is Star Wars. Now, that first release on LaserDisc was pan and scan, and it was time compressed so it would fit on one disc. This is letterboxed, and it's on 2 discs, so it's not time compressed. It's in a gatefold jacket. Now, the second release that I have of this is also on 2 discs, but it's pan and scan. Now, when I entered in the catalog reference number for this at the database to search for it, 1130-85, 3 releases came up for this film with the same number. One is a pending release that hasn't been proven to exist yet. It is a squeeze box release. Those are anamorphic widescreen films, but they're not letterboxed. They're still squeezed. And then you play it on a widescreen TV. I think you had to have a special decoder that would unsqueeze it. But anyway, I found that this had 2 releases with the same catalog reference number, and each of those 2 releases were made at 3 different facilities. Now, this has the logo CBS Fox Video. That is one release. The other has the Fox Video logo on it. As I mentioned, both releases were made at 3 facilities. The first at Pioneer, the second by Mitsubishi, and the third by Technodisc. Now, according to the database, this transfer, a lot of collectors refer to it as the incredible shrinking aspect ratio, because it starts off not so wide, and as you progress further and further into the film, the aspect ratio gets wider and wider and wider, to where you get to the final dogfight sequence. It's really wide. Supposedly that has something to do with the fact that they were using a transfer made for a Japanese release, and it had subtitles that they were covering. but I don't know if that's the actual reason or not. Supposedly the Technodisc version used a different master, a different transfer, so it doesn't suffer from that. But Technodisc was you were more likely to find problems, one of them being video crosstalk. This is a problem CLV had, but Pioneer corrected it when they came out with an improved version, 82 or 83, called CAA. No discs are marked CAA, but most discs made after that point were actually CAA and not CLV. Only two manufacturers to not use CAA discs was Technodisc, which supposedly the reason they didn't have to was because they were using software to compensate for the increased crosstalk, which apparently wasn't all that good of a software wind up with crosstalk. But that was 3M. The reason 3M didn't need to mess with CAA was because they made discs differently than anybody else did. Okay. This isn't my first release for The Empire Strikes Back either. Away with your weapon. I mean you no harm. This is release 1425-85. I believe this was made at multiple facilities, if I remember correctly. But I have actually two copies of that Star Wars that I showed you. Yeah, both of them were made by Pioneer. Return of the Jedi. These jackets are immaculate, by the way. This is release 1425-85. I guess I'll go in alphabetical order for a while. This was actually released on LaserDisc in the US twice. The first time, it had a different jacket. And I swear that I have that, but according to the database I don't. So I have to go through and look. I might have just seen it yesterday and today and not picked it up. But this is the second release it had, 1984. Also from Image Entertainment, but they had licensed it from a different company. So apparently the rights changed at one point. Okay. I believe I already have this film on LaserDisc full screen. I'm not sure. Anyway, this is letterboxed. All the President's Men. Even though it's on 2 discs, it's not going to get full jacket. This is release 1018. If it had subsequently been reissued, it would say 1018A/B. Have a number of examples where I have from both ways. Okay. This is the Netherlands release of a Steven Spielberg film. Obviously it was released, this one. Always. Now, every movie that I've come across that was released in the Netherlands on LaserDisc has had this exact same jacket design, which is kind of similar to the original design Image Entertainment was using in the beginning, except for the film strip part. This is branded Philips and CIC Video, or Kick Video. They were exclusive distributor for Universal, DreamWorks, and Paramount in a lot of countries outside of the US. This is PAL standard. What I've noticed too about Netherlands releases is they put the SPARS code on them if they have digital audio. SPARS code was initially something they came up with to help people buying CDs. The first letter would tell you whether it was recorded using analog or digital equipment. The second letter would tell you whether it was mixed with analog or digital equipment. And the third letter would always be a D because the final format is digital. Well, the SPARS code on this one is ADD. But Netherlands releases are the only ones I've seen that, where they use the SPARS code. You don't even see it all that often with CD releases anymore. Occasionally I do, but they've mostly gotten away from that. Okay, I believe this is the film, the release, where it was noted at the database that the sound on this is better than the Region 1 DVD sound. It's probably because while many LaserDiscs had digital soundtracks, they weren't compressed, whereas the DVDs, they did use compression. This is Amadeus from Pioneer Special Editions. This is Pioneer Special Edition. If I remember correctly, there were 2 Pioneer Special Edition releases of this. one in 95 and then another one in 96. This is the one from 96. This is PSE-96-073. So this is the 73rd special edition release for 96, as I believe I've explained in a previous video. Oh. Gatefold jacket. Now the cool thing about Pioneer Special Editions is that they would go back as far as they could on the elements to get the best elements possible, and then they would do a frame by frame restoration. Now this has the film soundtrack on the left analog channel. It's obviously a mono mix. The right analog channel is encoded with AC3 Dolby digital surround sound, and then the digital tracks are the film soundtrack in stereo. So really cool. And it's THX certified. The transfer of this, by the way, was supervised by a director who I think was Milos Forman. Yes. And they used something called SuperScan for when they did the transfer. And so they had monitors set up that showed both the high definition version and the NTSC version, and so they could get the absolute best image possible. Some of these gatefold jacket releases don't fit so well in protective outer sleeves. Okay, this is a LaserDisc that I used to have, and when it came out on DVD, I sold my LaserDisc copy. I now have it back. This isn't necessarily the same one. Could be. This title was one that was frequently requested to be released on DVD, letterboxed, and Warner Brothers kept saying, we can't release it on DVD yet because the master is not the, they would have to use the Panas master because the original widescreen elements were in bad shape. So they did a frame by frame restoration on the widescreen version and released that on DVD, and it has some added scenes, that edition. But this is the LaserDisc release for Around the World in 80 Days. Panas. Probably said that 3 or 4 times. This is release 11321A/B. So this is a reissue. Okay, over here now. This film has some reported cases of defects on it at the database, but it was made at multiple facilities. Both this copy and the copy I already have were made at apparently a good facility, because neither copy is defective in any way. So I don't remember now off the top of my head what who the manufacturers were in question. Just know that it's possible to find a good transfer, or a good copy of this. Batman Returns. This is a widescreen edition. Release 15,000. What I could do, came in Warner Brothers custom sleeves. Okay, 7Y is the first thing I see on the mint mark. The first characters. 7Y means the WEA manufacturing facility. That is, facility owned by Warner Brothers. If I remember correctly now, I think I remember now that the bad ones were made by Pioneer USA. But I don't necessarily take my word for it. Go to the database and check it for yourself. But know that there were two different facilities that made this release, and that you want to search out the one with the mint marks that start with 7Y. 7Y always indicates WEA. I have found a number of releases that were in the database as only being made by WEA, and then I find a Pioneer copy, or it'll be in the database as being made only by Pioneer, and then I'll find a Warner Brothers copy or WEA. Okay, now I go to this stack if I want to stay in alphabetical order. This is the original jacket design, the image used that I mentioned earlier, Biggles. Of course, anything aviation related I'm going to buy. Manufactured by 3M, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55144. I tend not to worry about 3M because they were one of the better manufacturers. In fact, one of the best manufacturers. Okay, I'll go over here now. This is a widescreen edition of Big Trouble in Little China, which I also have on VHS, but that's a full screen. This is widescreen. This is release 1502-85. I forgot to say the reference number is for Biggles. Sometimes you have to work your way through the small print with image. ID 5318NW for New World Video. Okay. Now we go over here. The Black Stallion. MGM UA video release ML101604. Okay, this is a Japanese release. I bought it from Music and More in the Netherlands. It's a Japanese release. It had an OB strip with it, but I'm not going to show that because the OB strip is for a different movie. Blondie. This was released by Herald Films. Originally sold for 4,700 yen. Has digital audio, coded with Dolby Surround Sound, and analog soundtracks, CX noise reduction encoded. But this is release number PILF-7287. It says manufactured by Nippon Herald, but there was no facility called Nippon Herald. There was a facility called Nippon Columbia. They made all the discs for Columbia Disc Corporation or whatever. It does say distributed by Pioneer LDC, Incorporated Japan. And if I remember correctly, Pioneer is who made it. But I find that's a common thing with Japanese releases. The publisher will take the credit for making the disc when they had nothing to do with making the disc. Okay, go here now. This is in widescreen and it's a THX certified release. Braveheart. And a gatefold jacket. This is release LV33118-2WS. And this one's in a heavy protective outer sleeve, so I got it from ABC Lasers. Clueless. Widescreen. This is Paramount Home Video release LV 33215-WS. Bought this one yesterday. Clash of the Titans, letterboxed edition. Jacket is in immaculate condition. And it's a gatefold. Contains the original theatrical trailer. This is MGMUA release ML102979. Okay, these next two I got from Music and More, but they're US releases. From Disney, and the jackets are immaculate. This is Cartoon Classics Volume 3, Scary Tales. Can't really fault Disney because they really supported the LaserDisc format. Okay, this is Cartoon Classics Volume 14, Silly Symphonies, Animal Tales, and it is still sealed. This is also a US release. The things I really like about Music and More is they get a hold of a lot of sealed copies. Okay, stay with this deck. Catch 22. This is Paramount Home Video Release LV6924. Forgot to do the catalog numbers on these. To Scary Tales, that's Volume 3. Release 164AS. Volume 14, Silly Symphonies. 366AS. Okay, these next two are ones that Bill put aside for me. The Crow in widescreen. THX certified. Encoded with Dolby Digital. Dimension Home Video, of course that's a Disney label. 7818AS. Okay. It's getting to be really long. This is still sealed. This is the sequel, The Crow, City of Angels. This is Miramax Dimension release 8947 AS. Exclusive Director's Cut. Features never before seen footage. Must see Brandon Lee tribute. Hot music videos. Okay. Crucible. In widescreen. This is a THX certified release. 2 discs, not in a gatefold jacket. Fox Video release 041445. Now this next one, believe it or not, Image Entertainment released 4 editions at the same time of the same movie. Dances with Wolves. This is the theatrical cut, widescreen. They also released the theatrical cut, pan and scan, and they released the director's cut, which is really long, both in pan and scan and widescreen editions. Okay, this is Image Entertainment release ID 8322OR. And I think I'll stop there, but I have a long way to go. And until next time, stay awesome.